Were you wearing glasses a second ago and now you're not? Or am I just imagining that because of all the Zoom filter stuff?
No, I wasn't wearing any glasses.
Okay. All right, cool.
Were you wearing
glasses
Zoom
here?
filter? Hey, there we
There
go.
it
That's
is.
like the meme sunglasses. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Listen, a lot of people are jealous about how cool I am. People say like, Dwight, how can I be more like you? You know, you're cool. You're into cool things. You're definitely not depressed. Like that's really cool. That's really cool to be. And I'm just like, listen, man, you need to get on my level. And let me give you a clue in how I live my life. All right, I wake up every morning, 6 o'clock on the dot. In case you're wondering and you're new to this, I actually have like a new lifestyle brand I do on my Instagram, so you're welcome to follow me there. But I wake up 6 a.m. every morning. I do some journaling.
Okay.
I do some manifesting.
Okay.
All right.
Vision boarding.
I drink exactly. Yep. I drink 1 glass of chilled water.
Okay.
With lemon juice, and then I take a frying pan and hit myself over the fucking head with it.
Oh yeah.
My routine is pretty similar. I wake up at like 11 a.m. I take twice the prescribed amount of Adderall. No, I'm just kidding.
God, I wish that was me.
Is there an and to that, or is that just and you blast and cruise from there?
That's the routine, you know, wherever the day goes from there. It's in God's hands. Praise the Lord.
Chris, perhaps you want to share
what
your morning... Uh-oh.
I can't see her because of the background.
I was getting distracted. Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
This is Chris's morning routine. Okay, for the listener that doesn't know what's going on, Chris's morning routine is that he stands in front of a saluting cop minion, and then his dog, I think, pisses on the ground.
A tiny bit.
Just a tiny bit.
Just a tiny bit.
Just a tiny bit. She's
excited
so good.
There's friends here.
She's such a good dog, dude.
Man.
She's a great dog.
My morning, if you're asking about my morning routine, what it looks like nowadays is I wake up like exactly 15 minutes before I have to log in for work and just
the dream.
Yeah, and just like dread my life for that 10 minutes.
And then what do you just like zip into it and you're cool?
You know, once I start, I never want to do it. But once I start doing it, it's fine. It's not so bad.
Sure,
the day goes by pretty quick.
That's great.
Of course, I never actually want to do it.
Of course, yeah.
The more and more I think about it, I mean, there's basically no reason that we need to work more than like 15 hours a week.
Yeah.
I'm here for degrowth, only to just work less.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's massive amounts of like, environmental benefits that will come, the slowing of climate change, and stuff like that. But I think I would just like a little bit of a break. Just a little break.
I will take any job. So if you are a hiring manager, DM me. No, I'm just kidding. Don't DM me ever.
Now when I was a young boy, about the age of 5, my teachers taught me I could be the greatest man alive. They told me I could change the world, be whatever I wanted to be. There was no one in the world like me. Every one of us was so unique. I'd not be an average man. No, sir, I'd be no average man. So I had those big dreams.
Welcome back, everyone, to Eat the Rich. This is a show about our political economy, late-stage capitalism, and the millionaires, billionaires, and multinational corporations hell-bent on staving off his death rattle. I'm Dwight, and today we have with us Chris.
Hello.
And we've got Carrie.
What's up?
So this one, golly, this take me by surprise, because I want to be honest about this for a second, because I had not heard about this couple before we suggested to ourselves to do this. And I spent the better part of this afternoon in the fucking dirt with this stuff. Because and I think I said this like on the Larry Ellison episode, where I was just like, I think we closed by saying like, hey, just so you know, if you think you know everything, there's a whole fucking other world of shit that you need to be concerned about. And this is this is it. This is just the next stage in that world. The Resnick family, the Resnick couple, The Resnicks, who it's
The Resnick Devils.
Yeah, literal demonic vampires.
Demons.
Folks.
Oh, demonic vampires. Oh, I can't.
Is that like Alex Jones' voice?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it kind of sounded
just
a
clip
little
that
bit
in.
more like
Demons! Like that.
Yeah.
mine sounded a bit more like Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh yeah, brother, let me tell you about Stewart and Lynda Resnick, brother.
That's really
The
good.
water rises to the top. You gotta sound like you have a deviated septum. So I don't want to spoil too much in the intro because I think Chris, I'm gonna turn it over to you and we can just kind of get into it. But basically everything that's bad in the state of California seems to be their fault. So, Chris, let me hand it over to you.
Sure.
Give us a primer on this.
Sure. I mean, just a kind of a little bit of overview of who exactly we're dealing with here. So Stewart and Lynda Resnick, they own the Wonderful Company. They own Palm Wonderful, the pomegranate juice, the Wonderful pistachios and almonds. They are the number one producer of pistachios in the country. They also own Fiji Water, and and they are, as Dwight said, almost, if not singularly to blame, very close. Maybe perhaps the two people we most have to blame for the water crisis in California right now.
Oh yeah.
Just a little statistic here. It takes 1 gallon of water to produce a single almond or a single pistachio.
Holy shit, dude.
Yes.
Of which they produce 450 million pounds per year.
Fuck me.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they are the single largest user of water in the state of California, and they basically own it as well. They basically own the rights to it as well in like a secret backroom deal that happened in the 90s. They've sort of almost singularly taken control of California's water. And before we get into all that, just a little bit of their backgrounds. So Stewart Resnick, he was born in New Jersey in 1936. His grandparents had fled Ukraine in the early 1900s and came to the United States. His father was 3 years old at the time. They settled in Brooklyn, and then that's where his father met his mother, and then the Depression hit, and then they moved to Middlebrush, New Jersey, where they bought a few trucks and sold coffee and pots and pans and stuff. By the way, most of this research comes from two sources. One of them is called Oligarch Valley, How Beverly Hills Billionaire Farmers Lynda and Stewart Resnick Profit from the Iran Sanctions They Lobbied For. We'll get into that as well. That's by Yasha Levine. And another article by a guy named, what was his name, Dwight? Mark Arax. Yeah. A Kingdom from Dust by Mark Arax, who is...
That's a great article. I read that one too.
Yeah, and this guy's kind of been on this beat for a long time. There's a documentary called Water and Power that he's featured pretty heavily in. It's about all of this as well. But anyway, so Stewart Resnick's mother and father, they moved to from Middlebrush, New Jersey to Highland Park, New Jersey, which is right across the river from Rutgers University. That's where Stewart Resnick was born. And in Highland Park, Resnick's father bought a neighborhood bar, and he ran it for many years. And Stewart Resnick describes his father as like a real no good kind of guy. He describes him as like a drunk and a gambler, supposedly with organized crime ties.
It's bad to be cool now.
Resnick described him as, quote, a great negative role model. He said in one of the very few interviews he's ever given, he says, the lessons I got from him were all what not to do. He says one time he came home from school to find the family car gone, that his father had lost it in a bet.
Oh, shit.
So he's growing up in New Jersey. He works at a pharmacy while he's in high school. And then after he leaves high school, he attends Rutgers for a year, and then he gets a call from an uncle of his out in California who called to let him know about all the success he was having out there. He'd bought some property in Long Beach and built a strip mall and stuff like that. So Stewart moves to Los Angeles, and this is 1956, and he enrolls in UCLA and joins a fraternity. And one of his fraternity brothers happens to be this wealthy kid whose father owns a janitorial business. So the two of them, they go in together and they split the cost of this industrial scrubbing and waxing machine from his friend's dad, and they start their own janitorial company, and they call it Clean Time Building Maintenance. And then, like, after a little bit of time, it says his friend gets bored with what they're doing, so Stewart buys him out for $300. He buys out his half of the interest, and then this is the first company. This is how Stewart Resnick begins kind of building his fortune. Yeah, so by the time he graduated UCLA in 1960 and entered law school, he was making $40,000 a year at this janitorial company that he owned. That's the equivalent of $320,000 in 2018 when the when this
working class
when the article was written. Yes, exactly. And so I mean, this is originally how he made his fortune. Although he didn't come from money himself necessarily. However, he did just so happen to get lucky and have a fraternity brother with a rich dad that they could take advantage of and get this equipment. And then, again, it's also the late 50s, like the most rapid economic growth in the history of the country. Just being in the right place in the right time, and just having a friend with a rich dad and just lucking into it. And so throughout the 60s, he grows this janitorial company into a $7.4 million a year business. And then by using the relationships that he fostered with these different companies whose offices he was cleaning, he expands into the security industry, because he's noticing the way he tells it, they don't, hey, while we're there at night cleaning the buildings, they don't have anybody watching the front and back doors. So he sells his janitorial company for $2.5 million, then uses that as seed money to start his security guard business, which, in an industry which, in the early 70s, was just really starting to boom. This is kind of also some ground we touched with the Kroll episode. But then, after a little bit, he realizes, hey, these security guards, they need to be paid an hourly wage, and that's cutting into my profits. So then he kind of expands into the security alarm industry. He buys a burglar alarm company and starts his own, and he calls it American Protection Industries, or API. And before too long, he's the biggest private security firm in the city, owning half the commercial alarm accounts in Los Angeles. One of the articles I read described this security company as highly connected, having former Secret Service agents on the payroll, and then, at one point he had a former police chief from the LAPD managing his company. And so through these connections, he lands a contract at the international terminal at LAX, the airport, running the security screening gates and guarding incoming international flights until they can be inspected by customs. And here's a really interesting little tidbit. Resnick and API were investigated in the mid-70s by the Federal Organized Crime and Racketeering Strike Force after three of his employees at the airport in Los Angeles sold 2 pounds of heroin to an undercover cop and got arrested.
Oh, Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah, reading a little bit from this LA Times article about it from 1976, it says here, the investigation grows out of a narcotics smuggling case involving 3 former employees of American Protection Industries, which has the security contract for the international terminal at the airport. Court records in the case and other sources indicate that a potentially massive fraud against airline companies is being investigated by federal, state, and local agencies. In addition, sources close to the investigation say extremely solid documentation of organized crime ties to API employees has been unearthed. 5 persons, 3 of them identified by the authorities as former API employees, were arrested earlier this week on charges they sold almost 2 pounds of virtually pure China white heroin to undercover narcotics agents. During the 5-month investigation that led to the arrest, several of the suspects told undercover agents that they had access to a large supply, as much as 100 pounds at the time, of the heroin, which they said was being shipped into the country on commercial airliners. And there was never anything that was able to tie any of this directly to Resnick. He blamed the whole ordeal on a few bad apples, within his company or whatever, and trying to allege that it was a shakedown by a disgruntled former employee that had set them up or something like that. And there was never anything that ties him to him directly. It's interesting, though, especially in light of his father's alleged organized crime connections. Weird stuff. It's weird stuff. And throughout this period, this is we're in like the 70s now, and he's married to his first wife, and he's got 3 kids. And then in right around 1971, 1972, he meets Lynda, who is going to become Lynda Resnick, who will become his second wife, and the one that he will form this partnership with that will make them both billionaires, because they really do kind of like they're very much equal partners in a lot of ways in the business. Like they kind of have like a division of power, whereas she really is in control of all of the marketing and advertising and everything like that, whereas he kind of runs the sort of business side of it, because that's how they originally met, was that she owned an ad agency. Now, Lynda was born rich. Lynda was born in Baltimore in 1943, and I believe raised in Philadelphia. She was raised wealthy. Her father was a Hollywood producer and film distributor. He's best known for producing The Blob in 1958. And after she graduates high school, the father moves them to Southern California, and she begins working at an in-house ad agency for Sunset House Catalog. And then at 19, undoubtedly with help from her father, she founds her ad agency, Lynda Limited. And this is how... interesting thing. Another interesting side note about Lynda as well. In the late 60s, she was dating a guy named Anthony Russo, who worked as an analyst at the Rand Corporation and was a friend and co-worker of Daniel Ellsberg, who leaked the Pentagon Papers.
Really?
In fact, it was Lynda's Xerox machine at her ad agency that was used to copy the classified documents before they were released to the New York Times. So that all happened. She was like an unindicted co-conspirator and all this. Like, she was investigated at the time about all this as well. Comrade Lynda. I mean, she's been cool and on the right side of everything ever since, you know?
Yes. Don't look into it recently, but yeah.
No,
I was imagining it was so funny when I first read it, because I was imagining like Lynda is like a 1970s like revolutionary, but she's like doing everything she's doing is like for the 1%. Like, she's bombing, like, instead of bombing the FBI, she's bombing like OSHA or like the Department of Labor or something like that, or like recruiting the Weather Underground to bust Ivan Boesky out of jail or something. All right, so Stewart and Lynda meet, like I said, around 1970, 71 or so, and he's looking for an ad agency to help him grow his security business, and that's how he finds her. They get married. After the ordeal with his airport employees getting busted with the heroin, he sells his security company for $100 million. And from here on out, like I said, Stewart and Lynda are pretty much kind of partners in everything that they're doing from there on out. And the first thing that they do is buy a company called Teleflora, which was a large flower delivery company, which they then grew through the 70s. And then in the late 70s, with the era of the inflation and everything like that in the late 70s, and as Stewart describes it, they were looking for a place to park some money as a hedge against inflation. And so in 1978, they buy 2,500 acres of citrus groves and orchards in Kern County, which is in the southern part of the Central Valley in California. And this is how they first got into the agricultural business, neither of them having any prior experience in farming or agriculture or anything like that at all. Supposedly, the way they describe it is this was originally, like a hedge against, it was like a real estate kind of investment. It was like a hedge against inflation, a place to park some money. And again, they find themselves lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, because in 1979, the Iranian Revolution happens. And Jimmy Carter imposes the first of, years of brutal economic sanctions and trade restrictions on Iran. And prior to 1979, pretty much all the pistachios consumed in the United States were imported from Iran, which, all gets cut off in 1979. So the Resnicks decide to start with this farmland they've invested in, start growing pistachios. And their pistachio part of their business remains pretty much the backbone of, their fortune and everything they've done, to this day. So they start buying up, after they start growing the pistachios all throughout the 80s, they start buying up like, thousands of acres of land from Mobil Oil and Texaco, and these big landowners that I guess they've fucking like tapped dry all the oil or whatever. And now we just need to like put a bunch of fucking pistachios in here and just tap all the water dry as well. So they buy up all this land to plant pistachio and almond orchards. And this was like during a time in the 80s where there was this really long period of drought. So they were able to grab up all this land really, really cheap. Yeah, nearly 160 square miles by the end of the 80s they owned, and they have pretty much a monopoly on pistachios. By far the largest grower in the country. They control something like 60% of the industry. Now, their control of the pistachio industry in the United States is heavily dependent on the continued economic sanctions against Iran. So they're very heavily invested in, keeping tensions between the United States and Iran ratcheted to 100. It says Iran's, I found this funny, Iran's pistachios are considered far superior to U.S. pistachios. I've never had them. I really want to try some now.
Yes, we need Iranian pistachios.
Yeah. But
I will not rest. I will not move on, frankly, until we get some of those.
This was an interesting thing that was in that Oligarch Valley article that they were talking about how Iran's pistachios are, considered so much superior that even in Israel, which Israel is apparently the number one consumer of pistachios, and they still import most of their pistachios not from Iran directly, but from Turkey, who gets them from Iran. So they would.
That's so funny.
So they would rather continue to get them from Iran than to get them from us. And, again, this being the backbone of their entire fortune, of the Resnicks' fortune, really relies on continued hostility with Iran. So they, put their money where their mouth is. And, the two of them over the years have made common cause with, neocons and Iran hardliners and all that sort of stuff, donating large sums of money and sitting on the boards of various, think tanks and policy institutes that advocate for war with Iran. And I want to read a little bit directly here from this Oligarch Valley article that talks a little bit about this. It says tax filings from 2008 show that Stewart Resnick and his wife Lynda are on the board of trustees of the highly influential Washington Institute for Near East Policy, which was created as an AIPAC spinoff in the 80s. In the realms of U.S. government Mideast policy and media reporting about the region, the think tank is considered to be one of the most influential in the country. It is also ridiculously hawkish on Iran, calling for heavy sanctions and military strikes against the country. In 2005, the Resnick Foundation gave $20,000 to the Washington Institute for Near Eastern Policy. Unfortunately, the real amount of money the Resnicks have given to the Institute is hard to gauge, as any funds that did not go through their personal foundation would not have to be reported on any of their IRS documents. Stewart Resnick is also a board member of the American Friends of IDC, a not-for-profit foundation that serves as the fundraising arm of the Interdisciplinary Center Herzliya, a think tank with close links to the Israeli intelligence and military establishment. Like the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, it's considered to be the most influential think tank in Israel on security matters. American Friends of IDC funneled $10 million to Herzliya in 2006. It's not clear how much money Resnick has personally contributed to this nonprofit, as nonprofits are not required to disclose the names and addresses of their contributors. But the fact that Resnick is on the board of directors shows his direct involvement in a powerful organization pushing a hardline anti-Iranian policy. After all, Stewart Resnick sits on the board with a long list of well-known neocons, Islamophobes, and Iran war boosters, including Vegas tycoon Sheldon Adelson, the founder of pro-Iraq Iran war group Freedom's Watch, and infamous backer of all things neocon. Again, also some of the other people that are involved in this organization, Bill Kristol, Mitt Romney, Wesley Clark, Ariel Sharon, Nicolas Sarkozy, just a few of the big names there.
Murderers Row.
Nightmare weed rotation.
Another good one here. It says documents filed with IRS show that the Resnick Foundation funneled roughly $1.125 million to the American Jewish Committee in a 5-year span between 1999 and 2004. The American Jewish Committee, which also goes by Jewish Federations, was one of the most active lobbyists pushing for a sweeping Iran sanctions bill passed in 2010. It was right up there with Halliburton, Chamber of Commerce, ExxonMobil, and Lockheed Martin. Yep. And so it's funny because these people, they have a very sort of particular image about themselves. They're both like, their contributions sort of seem to go to everyone, Democrats and Republicans, but they're almost like they live in Beverly Hills. They're like very like sort of like A-list. You know, they host parties for like they hosted a cocktail party for Dianne Feinstein at their estate in Beverly Hills. And you know, other people.
Dianne was there in body but not in mind.
Yeah, but yeah, so you know they're mostly you know, have close connections to various, you know, Democrats in California, and even a lot of their self promotion and the marketing they do. It has this sort of almost like, especially like the pomegranate juice, it has this sort of like kind of crunchy,
yes,
you know, sort of like hippie, it's good for you, sort of like this is the image they're trying to create for themselves. It's sustainable and all this sort of stuff. They have all this sort of bullshit sort of propaganda in their marketing that would try to, you know, make it appear that they you know, that they value progressive things, or they value progressive causes, or that sort of stuff. And then, you know, but when it really comes down to, you know, where their money really goes to protect their interests, it's you know, advocating to bomb the hell out of Iran. That's what they would really like to do.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean, we'll get into, I suppose, a little bit more of that. I don't know if Dwight, if you want to kind of pick it up from here and talk a little bit about some of the other companies and how they've expanded their business since they first got into, you know, pistachios in the late 70s.
Yeah, I think just as a quick interjection, it would be interesting to talk about their vineyards because it's. Well, let me read from a piece that was from the San Luis Obispo Tribune. It was from 2016, and it's a microcosm of kind of like one of the ways that they operate. But it was just like, it's this one. Well, I'll read through it and you'll understand. So Justin Vineyards being like the you know, one of a wine brand of theirs under their wonderful company holdings. It says here, Justin Vineyards owners to donate 380-acre site where oaks were cut down. This is by Lindsay Holden. And it reads here, Justin Vineyards and Winery on Friday announced it will donate the 380-acre North County parcel that was recently the site of a controversial mass oak removal to a land conservancy. Lynda and Stewart Resnick, who own the land and the Justin brand as heads of the multinational wonderful company, said in a statement that they are ashamed and are sorry for being, quote, asleep at the wheel.
Oh, so sorry.
The Resnicks plan to give the property to 750 Sleepy Farm Road in West Paso Robles to an undetermined local nonprofit. In addition, they said they will restore the land to its natural contours by undoing extensive grading, halt the construction of an agricultural reservoir that would have been filled by pumping in 6 million gallons of groundwater, and are, quote, looking for other conservation opportunities in the greater Adelaida area. So let me just go into kind of what happened here. It said the announcement came more than 2 weeks after angry Paso Robles neighbors complained that thousands of oak trees were destroyed and grading work for the pond denuded hillsides and threatened to cause erosion problems on adjacent properties. The uproar prompted San Luis Obispo County to investigate, issuing a stop work order to prevent any more clearing or grading. They citing 3 violations, including failing to notify the agency of tree removal ahead of time so surveys of nesting birds could be done. Outraged residents launched a boycott of Justin Wines, and some restaurants stopped serving their products. So basically, to long story short, this, as we're going to learn from a majority of their kind of farming practices, it's like nature be damned. Yes. Anything that happens is, primarily motivated by profit. And so much so that, this is, I just can't imagine. They're doing deforestation. There's no other way to describe it. It's just like, I can't imagine, especially now, like in the 21st century, deforesting thousands of oak trees.
Sure.
That blows my mind. So just as an example of like one of their, like you were saying, Chris, like one of their business practices, with one of their other brands under their wine brands, like they don't give a shit about that. The entire point of them is to just do it for profit.
It's interesting too that you said they were like, oh, we didn't know, we're so sorry, because that also came up in one of the Mark Arax article, or Arax, I'm not sure how to say his name, I'm so sorry, but in one of his articles that I read, like he basically said that he was like, oh, I can't keep track of everything that happens in my business, I'm sorry if bad stuff happens.
Wild. Ignorance is 9/10 of the law. Close enough. I think maybe it would be helpful now to talk about the the private water shit.
Yeah, sure. I think we would be remiss though if we skipped out on, which I just love. I love that they owned the Franklin Mint for a period of time, like in the 80s, after they made a bunch of money off their initial investment in agriculture. They bought the Franklin Mint, and they owned it for about 20 years, which is, the Franklin Mint makes like fake commemorative coins and
that's so
little
great
tchotchkes and like just little fucking tchotchkes and just little, they were selling, they had made a fortune selling Princess Diana commemorative porcelain dolls after she died. They would sell them on like late night infomercials and stuff, and the estate of Princess Diana actually sued them, and so they sued them back. The Resnicks sued the estate of Princess Diana for $13.5 million so they could continue selling their Princess Diana porcelain dolls.
Did they win?
Yes, they did. Yes, they sued successfully. Mm-hmm.
How? That's so crazy. Oh my God.
But yeah, they sold a bunch of Elvis stuff too, like the Franklin Mint. Yeah, they make like collectible coins and like Elvis dolls that they show on like the Home Shopping Network. I thought that
grandma definitely bought those Diana dolls, even though she did not even speak English. She was just obsessed with that.
Yeah. So, God, I'm just trying to find, I don't understand the mechanization of how this happened, that they took I know that they did. Anyway, let me just read something quick. I'm going to give like a little primer from a shorter article, and then we'll flesh it out a little bit.
Yeah. And if you need me to, I can help. I can pull up one of the articles I had and jump in with some of the mechanisms of shit that they did if you want.
Ketamine therapy, something like that. Electroshock. So I'm gonna read from a LA Curbed article from 2016 called "How a Los Angeles Couple Came to Control a Water Empire." Mm-hmm. And again, as you were talking about, Chris, like none of this agriculture occurs without like an enormous amount of water.
Right.
Unfortunately, California doesn't have a crazy amount of it.
Right.
So, the question is, what is it used for?
Well, and if I may, an interesting thing as well is that the land in Western Kern County, where much of their where the land they originally bought and where much of their orchards are, it only is usable farmland because of the California aqueduct that was built to bring rainwater down, because most of the rain in California falls in the northern third of the state. Most of the people live in like the southern half, so they had to build this massive aqueduct to bring water down, and it flows through Kern County, and the land that their orchards is on has no groundwater. It would be desert. It would be desert. It would be you wouldn't be able to farm there at all were it not for the aqueduct passing through. So they're completely dependent on this source of water. They don't have any even groundwater. They don't have any water on their property to use. They're completely dependent on this public flow of water that comes through the Central Valley.
They literally get 5 inches of rainfall for the entire year. Like that's it.
So there was a Mother Jones article here that came out also in 2016 that pretty much details kind of like just the enormous scale and pilfering that the Resnicks have done to feed their crops with water. From this LA Curbed article, it says here, I'm just going to say real quick, they literally say in the article, here's the gist of it. Back in 1978, the Resnicks entered the agricultural business with the purchase of some orange groves in Kern County, as you were talking about earlier, Chris. They later expanded their assets, buying farms on the cheap through the drought years of the 1980s. Their company, then known as Paramount Farms, but now called the Wonderful Company, soon became the largest producer of pistachios in the world. Blah, blah, blah. We know this. Also, yeah, they're one of their crops is those Halo clementines.
Oh, yeah.
I fucking love those. Now I can't have them now.
Yeah. There's also like a feud between them and the Cuties people.
Fucking I just want to enjoy fruit. All right, so continuing here, it says, now, of course, now all that farming requires a ton of water. Fortunately for them, the Resnicks own a majority share of what's known as the Kern Water Bank. The state paid $75 million developing this massive underground storage facility before mysteriously handing it off to Kern County officials, who then gave much of it to Westside Mutual Water Company, a private water supplier owned by the Resnicks.
Yeah, essentially, most of the the control of the Kern water bank was mostly like handed over to management of it was basically handed over to local industrial farmers in the area of which the Resnicks in particular, they own like 57% of the stake in it. I believe they own like 57% of the stake of the Kern water bank, which is gives them basically majority control of it.
Yep.
So let me to flesh this out. Let me read from this Mother Jones article where they talk about that transaction, and it's a little kind of narrative, but you'll understand it once we read through it. It says, if you've watched Chinatown or read Cadillac Desert, you know something about California's complicated and often corrupt 100-year-old fight over water rights. The state's laws were designed to settle the frontier, and under the, quote, first in time, first in right rule, the most senior water claims are the last to be restricted in times of drought. This means some farmers are still able to flood their fields to grow cattle feed, even as residents of towns such as Okieville and East Porterville have to truck in water and shower using buckets. But the Resnicks' water rights, by and large, are not senior. To expand their agricultural empire, they had to find another way to tap into the flow from north to south. And to understand how they were able to do that, you have to start with 2-inch-long minnow that smells like cucumbers. Fucking what?
What?
What? Once an abundant food source for Northern California's dwindling salmon population, the Delta smelt, and a smelt is a small fish, has been nearly eradicated by those enormous pumps, capturing the flow of water from the Sierras.
Oh, wow, that's so interesting.
In 1993, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service listed the smelt as threatened under the Endangered Species Act, setting the stage for pumping limits. Worried about getting short shrift on water deliveries, the Resnicks and other farmers in 5 local water districts threatened legal action. So in 95, state officials agreed to a deal, or as it had been suggested, a staggering giveaway. The farmers had to relinquish 14 billion gallons of, quote, paper water, which is junior rights that only exist de jure, meaning there's and it says since there's simply not enough rainfall most years to fulfill them, meaning like they on paper owe this water, but it's only, de facto or whatever. They don't actually get that amount of water. In exchange, they got ownership of the Kern Water Bank, a naturally occurring underground reservoir that lies beneath 32 square miles of Kern County, which sits towards the southern end of the Central Valley. This is near like Bakersfield, Bakersfield is in Kern County, right?
Yeah, it's west of Bakersfield where all this is, yeah.
The bank held up the 488 billion gallons of water, and because it sat beneath a floodplain, it could be easily recharged in wet years with rainfall and surplus water piped in from the delta. The Resnicks, who'd given up the most paper water rights, came to a majority vote on the bank's board and the majority of its water. So through that weird fucking maneuver,
Right.
they were able to take control of this water bank.
Yeah.
And they have this incredible...
A public utility, which is essentially handed over to the control of 2 people.
Right.
They have here a great graph, which I'm not going to read through it, but basically what it shows is it's titled The Thirstiest Californians, and its estimated annual water use in millions of cubic meters. And basically, they have, I'm just kind of like eyeballing this here, but the amount of water that they use for their pomegranates is the equivalent of about 70% of the water that goes to all homes in San Francisco.
Holy shit.
I got another figure for you.
Yeah, hit me with it.
Their entire annual water use is around 120 billion gallons a year, 2/3 of which goes to producing nuts, producing almonds and pistachios. That 120 billion gallons that they use per year is enough water to supply the entire city of San Francisco with water for a decade.
What the fuck?
That's so wild, dude.
What the fuck, dude?
And by the way, in the 3 years after that agreement in 1995, where they took control of the Kern Water Bank, they nearly doubled their cultivated land holdings. Like the amount of farm that they have, they doubled it within the 3 years after they took control of the water.
Yeah.
So it's funny here. Now I'm gonna continue just reading here where they talk about how they actually did this, politically and shit. Says 2 years later, with a federal judge now restricting Delta pumping for the sake of the smelt, again, that's that little fish, the Resnicks began raising their concern with friends in Washington. At the top of that list was California's senior senator, Dianne
there
Feinstein.
She is. All right.
Girl power.
Feinstein, who she chairs the Senate Appropriations Committee, the powerful energy and water panel, typically serves as the key negotiator on California-related water bills. She hasn't been able to see the text on her water bills for many years. Responding to prodding, no, please. Responding to prodding from Stewart Resnick, Feinstein sent a letter to the Secretaries of the Interior and Commerce, urging their agencies to re-examine the science behind the Delta Environmental Protection Plan. The agencies spent some $750,000 studying the issue, only to have researchers again conclude that the 2007 restrictions on the Delta pumping were warranted. So just to fucking get your mind around that for 1 second, because of their political influence with fucking Senator Dementia, they were able to get her to bully the Secretaries of Interior and Commerce to restudy something to the tune of $750,000 cost, to then have them say, like, yep, Senator, this was what it was. Now, it continues here, Lynda Resnick rejects the idea that the couple wields any political power on matters of water policy. Are you fuck off?
Fuck off.
That settles it then, I guess.
Boo!
Fuck off.
She says, "We have no influence politically, I swear to you," she told me.
Oh.
Nobody has political influence, nor would we use it.
Oh, okay. Well, if you say so.
Yet that's hard to square against the Resnicks' approach to state politics. They've given six-figure sums to every California governor since Republican Pete Wilson. They donated $734,000 to Gray Davis. They gave $221,000 to his replacement, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, who called them some of my dearest friends. He might sound like fucking Elmer Fudd. Some of my dearest friends. The $150,000 they sprinkled on Jerry Brown since 2010 might not seem a lot by comparison, but no other individual has given more, and the Resnicks have chipped in another $250,000 to support Brown's pet ballot measure to fund education.
And by the way, I saw a clip, like a news clip of Jerry Brown on TV, and this would have been, I think it was from 2015 or 2016, kind of right in the middle of this, current drought that we've got going on right now in California. And he was being asked about that, you're putting these restrictions on, telling people how long they can run their sprinklers and their, gardens for, or how long they can take a shower for, but you're not placing any kind of restrictions on, these large agribusiness firms. And his response to that, knowing very well how much money the Resnicks have given him, and knowing very well that they're the number one user of this water in the state, of course doesn't mention them, but then tries to make the argument like, well, we can't restrict the farmers because the farmers, they make our food, and it's important. It's more important than you having to take a 5-minute shower. But we're not talking about
That's great.
We're not talking about like staple crops. We're talking about pistachios and almonds.
And palm wonderful juice.
yeah. This is it goes entirely because it's the most profitable, right? They're not interested in feeding people. They could be growing anything on that land.
Yep. And I don't know if one of you guys mentioned this, but the amount of land that they have, it was like over 250 square miles total of land that they have in California, which is like an insane amount of land.
But they're continuing. They're constantly continuing to expand. I took note of one thing here. This is from 2018. Within 2018 they had planted an additional 79,000 acres of almonds, an additional 73,000 acres of pistachios, 35,000 acres of grapes, and 13,000 acres of mandarins. Right in the middle of this current severe drought that we've had going on in California for the past several years.
Gotta have my halos.
I'll tell you, I love those goddamn pistachios, but
Me too.
I got to get a plug for Iranian pistachios. If you can get pistachios
DM
from Iran,
Chris.
yeah.
Yeah, I want some of
I
those
do
too.
like pistachios a lot, but
I don't have them very often,
They're
but
fine.
they are tasty. I probably won't buy them again for a while because I'll feel guilty. But
yeah, it's really
Yeah.
grim stuff, man. It's completely
Yeah.
like a luxury item. It's not a necessary
It is.
Staple at all, and it's this massive amount of water is being wasted on this.
right, yeah.
These people are sick.
Yeah,
They
you're
are.
telling
They are
me.
really, really sick. I really hate them. So in addition to like the political questions and like any like legal issues that there might be with like the obviously very fucked up way that these people do business, what does this mean for the people who work the land? The people that are actually the ones producing the product that they end up selling, that they've become billionaires off of. There's an article from 2011, which is really good, and it was referenced in several other articles that I've read, and it was by John Gibbler. Let me make sure I got that right. Yeah. It was by John Gibbler, and it was published in the Earth Island Journal, and it's called Lost in the Valley of Excess, and it's about the town of Lost Hills, which is like completely surrounded by, all of this farmland that the Resnicks own, like pretty much on all sides. At the time that the article was written, it says that, they would have to drive like 20 miles to be able to get to somewhere to like cash a check at that time. And this does change, and I'll get to why. But basically, these are people that are about 97% Hispanic. Most of them are undocumented immigrants. And at the time the article was written, John Gibbler said that everybody he talked to was making between $8 and $8.65 per hour. And this is also where one of their headquarters is located. They have one Paramount Farming. At the time, it was called Paramount Farming. Like we said, everything has been renamed to Wonderful now because they're just so good and lovely. But at the time, Paramount Farming had two headquarters, one in LA and one in Lost Hills. And, this article is kind of about the stark contrast between those two locations. The Resnicks lived in Beverly Hills. They have this like crazy estate that looks like, I don't even remember what it said. It was like some kind of like French style. Like it's just like a really insane estate that they have.
And they also, if I may, they purchased and tore down 3 neighboring homes in Beverly Hills so that they could expand their ridiculous gaudy house.
Oak trees, homes, what's the difference?
So in contrast to that, all of the farm workers there at the time that this article was written were living in mobile homes that were just all set up in one area, and they actually can't drink water from their taps. They do not have potable water in their homes. The water that comes out from their taps is fucked up. It's like contaminated with pesticides. It has like weird smells. Now, in a later article that I read, it said that it is like better. Like Lynda Resnick. Let me get to that later. But anyway, it's the town of Lost Hills is bordered by oil fields to the west, not owned by the Resnicks. That's the only thing that is not owned by the Resnicks in the area. And then it's surrounded by thousands of acres of almond and pistachio orchards to the south, north, and east. It's got a population of about 2,000 people. That's the number on like the sign when you're coming into the town, and that's the official census number. But the workers are quoted in several articles, obviously anonymously, saying that it's actually a lot more people than that, because what tends to happen is just like people immigrate. And then I think it was the Mark Iraq's article had a lot of information about people like paying coyotes to then bring their remaining family members over illegally, that they're like tens of thousands of dollars in debt to these people in order to bring their family over. But it's a very, very small town. At the time this article was written, the postal service in town was just a small trailer with some PO boxes. There was no bank, no pharmacy, no local government. All public affairs went through Bakersfield, which was 40 miles away. There was just one small health clinic, an elementary school, and a utility district. 2 small food stores, a barber shop, an auto repair shop, 3 taco trucks. That's pretty much it. Again, like I said, the closest place to deposit a check would have been a supermarket 20 miles away. And 30% of the people living in Lost Hills at that time were below the federal poverty level. And again, these are all the people I think it was like either 80 or 90% of the people living in Lost Hills work for the Resnicks. Like it's a company town.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Exactly.
Right.
And I mean, it really, like, that really made me sick to think, like, there were, times where they had basically just like hoarded all this water just in case they had it, in the reserve. And these people just can't get clean drinking water. When they cash their checks, when they get paid, they immediately go to the store to get bottled water. There's actually a picture at the top of this article that I thought at first was like,
fuck, I thought it was art or something.
I thought it was like a very like on the nose type of like symbolic thing, but no, once I got to the end of the article, I realized that it is actually a worker. She takes a baby stroller every like 3 or 4 days to the grocery store to fill up a giant, I think it's like 5-gallon jug of water, because that's what she drinks out of. And then there was another figure from that article that like really got to me as well. What was it? Here, I just want to read directly just this one quote. During the dry years, when pumping from the Kern Water Bank caused the local water table to drop 115 feet, the Resnicks were making bank. The couple is what the nonprofit world likes to call major donors. They've given over $4 million to political campaigns, according to a recent California Watch analysis. In 2009, the Resnicks gave $55 million to the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. The per capita income of Lost Hills in 2000 was $8,317. The Resnicks handed the LA art scene more than double the combined income of the entire population of Lost Hills. That's just...
Jeez. It's like such a perfect fucking allegory for like the imbalance of our political economy.
Right.
One of the things that was profiled a little bit in that documentary I watched is like all the sort of mutual aid that goes on in this place to ensure that people have clean drinking water, and it involves
Sure.
Small groups of volunteers loading up a pickup truck full of cases of bottled water and driving around and delivering it to people. By the way, the aqueduct that I was talking about earlier flows directly through town on its way to water the Resnick's crops, but the people there have they can't drink it. Many of them won't bathe in it. They pay $69 a month for access to that water that they can't use.
So they just like watching it go by.
Yeah.
Right. In one of the articles that I read, it might have been the Mark Arax article, he said he was at somebody's house and he noticed that she was running the water a really long time. And he said, like, doesn't that drive up your bill? And she said, yeah, it does. Like, it can make the bill higher, but I run it for a long time because sometimes that makes it better. And then I'm able to cook with it, because otherwise it smells so bad that they won't even like cook their rice in it, for example. Just imagine like working for 10 hours a day at a farm. You can't even like come home and like use your tap water to make dinner.
I heard it be described as Lost Hills lemonade. I don't know if you saw that. No, and it's like it was like a tongue-in-cheek like joke between them to be like, hey, this is what we have to serve or whatever.
Sure.
If you come over to my house. And it was like fucking heartbreaking. And even like watching that little documentary, the trailer for it, the Water and Power documentary, and you're watching, he's interviewing this woman in the town in Lost Hills, and in the background of the room that they're sitting in is just stacked up. Yeah. This just like halfway up the ceiling, bottles of water. And I was just like, that's not a stage. That's just what they do to fucking live.
Well, the good news is Lynda Resnick caught wind of all that, and she went in and solved the problem for everyone. Right, Carrie?
Yeah, I mean, what a lot of people think is as a direct reaction to this article, which, what I've said from the article is just like a small bit of it. Like, it is very expansive and covers a lot. It covers a lot of the stuff that we talked about early in the show, too, about how they maneuvered to get all this water. And, it's kind of assumed that Lynda Resnick saw this and she was like, oh, shit. I need to like maintain my image, because obviously you can tell by the way they like renamed their company to Wonderful and all this stuff. Being billionaires is not enough for them. They need to be seen as good people.
They need to be loved.
They need it. It is very important to them as like liberals to be seen as people who are helpful. And the thing that really struck me is that, in addition to updating a lot of the stuff in the town, like now you can cash checks in town. I believe they built a charter school. She's basically like pumped millions of dollars into the town now since this article came out, basically to try to make herself look better, while ignoring the question of like, the 30 years that they owned this town without caring whether these people, had any kind of anything, Well,
and essentially like the extent of her philanthropy there involved like building a park and making like a slick PR video about it.
Just more lawn to water.
Yeah. And there's like such a strong emphasis. What really weirded me out was like the really strong emphasis on like the anti-obesity initiative. I don't know if you guys saw this, but
what they all need to be doing is drinking more pomegranate juice.
Right. You
got
need Palm
antioxidants.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things it mentioned, like they showed a video, like they gather the workers all together to do like these little presentations.
Sick.
Well, they're like show them
It's real
videos
sick
about
stuff.
like, you know, at
that's
the Wonderful
company town shit.
Right. It's like at the Wonderful Company, we're always researching the best nutrition for you. So, and it's just like, I don't know,
Sick.
it's so psychotic. And to her, she thinks that she's like being such a good person. When I first started Googling, I came across this video from some like ideas festival, basically like a place where rich people go to toot their own horns. And it was just her and these two artists talking about the design of the town. And it's like a 5-minute clip, and they're talking about everything that she's done for Lost Hills. And they don't actually say anything that she did. It's just 4 people on screen talking about how good she is and how much better off the town is, and that this is just how good of a person she is. And she was just born to do this, and that she feels like she was called to do it. But it doesn't actually say anything that she fucking did. And there was one quote in one of the articles I read is that she said she actually loves that it's named Lost Hills because now she can say that Lost Hills has been found.
Oh yeah, they're big into that. Yeah.
They love that.
God,
Which is just so sick.
Jesus.
Again, you have to keep in mind the context that like for 30 years they did not give a fuck, and that even still today
Right.
they do not have totally clean water. Like it's supposedly
Right.
filtered,
Right.
but it smells so bad.
Yeah.
Like would you feed your children food that was cooked in water that smells like piss, which is what they say that it smells like? Come on. You know, so some like small amount of change has come out of this. At the time the original Earth Island Journal article was written that I was talking about, they could not get overtime, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, I believe it was, had vetoed a bill that would have let farm workers get overtime. You know, I wonder who influenced that. But that did eventually go through. I looked that up because I knew the article was a bit old. That did eventually go through. It's on like a timetable, the way that it's going to go up over the next few years. It's still not great. They still have to work a lot to get any overtime. But the Resnicks also then like started championing the idea of like increasing minimum wage, which to them is nothing, right? Like, as I said, they donated, you know, orders of magnitude more than the entire combined income of the city. So
it's essentially a marketing cost.
Right. It is just a marketing cost to them then give some of their workers $15 minimum wage. But, you know, it really struck me how much this like one piece of journalism was able to influence their actions, like how much they actually, like, it's just not enough for them
petty.
to be insanely rich.
They're so petty.
Yeah.
So fucking petty.
Just be rich, you know? Like, why do you need to pretend to be good, you know? And
Enjoy.
it is just so sick. While they still don't have clean water, for them to be pretending like we found Lost Hills, we saved it, we're the saviors of Lost Hill.
What did they need saving from, Resnicks?
Right. What caused that? I don't know.
By the way, speaking of petty, in addition to their home in Beverly Hills, they also spend a bunch of time in Aspen. They have like a lakefront home in Aspen. And in the early 2000s, they tried to, like, I guess, sue the city over a housing project for local municipal employees that was going to be built a half a mile away from their property. Saying it would devalue their land.
Can I just muse on something for a second?
By all means.
Yeah.
I think about this sometimes, like when on something like that, where like these billionaires have a lake house or something like that, whatever. They have different properties that they have access to, and I just think about it like, you know, they don't have to like lift a finger to travel somewhere, right? They have like people that pack for them, and they've got valets that travel with them or whatever. Yeah, in private jets, and it's just like it's very easy for them to like go from point A to point B.
Right.
Sure.
And I imagine, and for us laymen that need to like travel somewhere, whether we're like doing a road trip or something to go to a lake house, let's just say, a train, whatever. It's a schlep, right? It's a thing. Like, you got to decide what you're going to put together. Like, oh, fuck, did I do the laundry? Do I have any underwear to bring to this?
You have to account for a lot of stuff. Sometimes you have to take an extra day off work to get ready to go anywhere. Yeah.
And you gotta load the car and bring it all the way up and down, you know, out into the car, and then, you know, get there and all this stuff, and you're like, oh fuck, I'm hungry, let's get a sandwich. It's like, it's a schlep to do it. But then you get there and you're like, all right, let's just take everything out of the car, let's crack a beer, let's go sit by the lake, and like, let's just chill. And this, like, it's like exciting. You're like, I did it.
Sure,
and there's that like sense of like feeling it's cool. Can you imagine for a guy like Stewart Resnick, where it's just like, he's like, They go to the lake house, and he just like walks in. Somebody hands him a Fiji water, and he just like walks out. And somebody just like, and he walks out, and he's just like, "All right, I'm here now." there's no way.
No joy.
There's no joy. There's nothing. There's just like, "Oh, I'm here and I have it."
I was gonna say too, Chris, when you said they have the house in Aspen, it made me remember that video. It's the Aspen Ideas Festival.
Oh,
and
was it?
As much as Lynda Resnick tries to be like, I'm this like down to earth, like giving person or whatever. The guy running the little panel they were doing was like, "Oh, so where did you all meet?" And she said in like this almost cartoonish rich lady voice, she was like, "Oh, well, Aspen, of course. Where else do you meet anybody except Aspen?" And it was just like so revealing.
Is there video of that?
Yeah.
Could we play
Do you want to
that?
cut it in? Yeah, sure. I'll find the video again.
Let's start with Lynda. So there's a lot of different ways to get into this particular aspect of your leadership. But let me ask you, how did you meet the Haas brothers?
Of course, I met them in Aspen, right? Where do you meet anybody? And we met through Jeannie Rohatton, I think, who's an art dealer. And it was love at first sight, for me anyway.
Me too.
And we started seeing each other in LA, and I wanted them to do a set of benches, some of those crazy looking furry benches with the legs for our entry hall, so we commissioned a piece.
And it was just so like, you're a demon.
Jesus, it's like she's like a Liza Minnelli character.
Yeah. Yes. So in Dante's Inferno, where in Dante's Inferno, where like in one of those circles of hell, the punishment is you're like really thirsty for eternity, but you have the water right here at your chin level. For the listener, I'm putting my hand at the chin level, and every time you like go down to take a drink, the water level goes down.
Jesus Christ!
I think that's what should happen to them. That's what I think.
Put them in a vat of Lost Hills lemonade.
Yes.
Jesus Christ!
That's my conclusion.
I can't what the fuck is the point? Like I thought about this earlier today. It's like if the world was ending in a year and we had a year to live it out, how would we want to allocate the resources for us to live that last year?
I mean, if there's only a year,
yeah,
cocaine.
Okay, well, I didn't mean. I meant more.
If you're saying everybody's dead in a year, like
I meant more of what, like, how would we redistribute them from the current holders of it? Not like
sure.
Well, okay, fair enough. That's if you have your only a year left. Who am I to judge? The fact that all these, I mean, the point of the thought experiment is to be like, in an ideal world, how would we want to have this structured or whatever?
Sure.
And it just there's just no justification for them to continue this. And again, it's almost like I think about it in the weird kind of like almost human ways that capital in itself moves, right? Because like when these guys die, the wonderful company will still exist.
Sure.
I just who knows what deranged delinquent kids they're gonna leave it to or whatever weird.
Do they have kids? That was the one thing I didn't look into.
Yeah, they have a bunch of kids. They were both previously married, and they have they both have kids from their previous marriages. Do they have kids together? I actually don't know.
Oh, one of them is a singer-songwriter.
I said it the other day that everybody that in Hollywood or in the music industry has rich fucking parents.
Sure.
Oh my God.
What's the name? I want to ridicule them.
Jason Sinay is the guitarist's son.
How do you spell that?
Sinay.
Yes, sir.
I look up Jason Sinay and it says Jason Sinay Fiji water.
That's right.
We didn't even get into Fiji water. By the way, everything we've just we've just discussed about them doing with California's water supply, they're also doing on the island of Fiji with their water supply because they also own Fiji water, which they again same kind of issue. They're bottling this water at a ridiculous premium price. They're exporting it and selling it while people who live in Fiji don't all necessarily have access to clean drinking water, while the Resnicks pilfer it.
It's so deranged, right? Like they're using all the water in California, then they're exporting all the water from somewhere else and importing it back in bottles.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So firstly, I found Jason Siné on Twitter, and he has 50 followers.
All right,
and
let's
he
harass him.
posted,
Loser.
Well, I don't even think he's on it because he hasn't posted since 2020.
Even more of a loser.
But he was posting. He did a thing of him playing this Robbie Robertson strat. When he's playing slide guitar, and he sucks. You suck. You're talentless. You're nobody.
You suck! You're a no talent! If you really had talent, go practice and then get yourself a gig instead of ruining the end of the day for everybody down here. You disgrace!
Oh, look at this. This is very interesting. His last tweet is a retweet of his daughter, who is I guess, journalist, right? Based on her bio, it says fake blonde, currently at independent, at Indy 100, words and she knows, Teen Vogue, etc. Just the chain keeps going down of like
this guy's gonna be a billionaire. He's gonna be a billionaire. Can you imagine that?
Oh man.
That's what like there's no way that they can fucking derive any enjoyment from anything. Because they're just he's just like, well, I guess I'll try to play guitar for a while. And then he's just like, well, I guess I have to wait for my parents to die for me to inherit $1 billion.
I mean, it's like you wonder, how can people afford to pursue a career in music? How can people afford to pursue, like, then the granddaughter a career in writing? How can she like afford to just like live in New York and work on a writer's salary? And the truth is she can't. She couldn't afford that. Nobody can afford that. It's because she has generational wealth.
Yes.
And
the government should pay artists to make art. That's my take. But fucking, instead we got this bullshit.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. I hate this episode, dude. I have so much hate in my heart.
Delete the episode.
We didn't even mention also that
Spotify.
Another one of the things that they do through their control of the Kern water bank is that in times of drought or in times, basically what they can do is they can take the water that the state has pumped down to the Kern water bank, and then they essentially resell it to various like county water agencies. Like they sell it back to the state for like 3 or 4 times the price that they paid for it, and they try to justify it as a pumping fee when all it's done the entire time is just sit in the Kern water bank. It didn't have to be moved or pumped or anything.
They're sick.
They're sickos.
I'm sorry. Last thing we just have to say about them is that they donated. Apparently, again, this is not in a lump sum, but $750 million to Caltech to research into climate change and sustainability. And it says here, this is a quote from Stewart Resnick. He says, my grandkids, I don't know why he just sounds like he's fucking falling apart, but he says, my grandkids, they would yell at me all the time. How can you help with this? What are you doing about it?
Oh,
a lot of the adults are not concerned, but the kids are concerned, and rightfully so. The donation from Resnick and his wife Lynda, this is from Los Angeles Times from 2019. It said the do, re, mi, fa, so. I lost it. The donation from Resnick and his wife Lynda to build a sustainability center, fund immediate research, and enrich an endowment expected to spin off $20 million a year, not sure what that means, is the second largest to an American university.
Damn.
But I'm just like, you're the fucking ones that are doing the damage.
For $100,000, I will give them the advice they need, which is to stop growing almonds. That's it. I figured it out.
For $100,000, I will go sleep.
He said it! Yes!
Please bleep that. 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 I'm not having a very good day. I'm not having a very good day.
I think, again, in a very abstract sense, I don't know what their address is, but I do think if hell is real, the Dante's Inferno water torture, very fitting punishment.
Like pomegranate juice, though.
With pomegranate juice. Yes. Yeah.
One last thing. Do you remember the fucking nutty fucking pistachio commercials?
Yeah, that's all Lynda.
Like with Stephen Colbert and shit. Oh my!
I don't remember
God.
that.
Yeah, I mean,
don't remember that.
Linda really, I mean, I guess to her credit as an advertiser, I mean, she really, essentially, like, I mean, they pretty much single-handedly started like this craze, not just with pistachios, but also with pomegranates. Like all of that fucking bullshit about pomegranate juice being like the super antioxidant and all that sort of stuff. Like she basically invented all of that out of fucking whole cloth. They were actually like a federal judge ruled that their like advertising around the pomegranate juice was deceptive because they were saying that it could like prevent reduce the risk of heart disease and prevent prostate cancer and erectile dysfunction.
All lies.
And all lies, all nonsense, but that they use to like justify why it costs $18 for a 48-ounce bottle.
Do you remember that? Like when all of a sudden it seemed like everybody was talking about how pomegranate juice would like prevent cancer.
Propaganda.
That was so sad.
It's fucking propaganda.
And I think after they were ruled against, they tried to get the Supreme Court to take the case, right?
Did,
like the Resnicks tried.
Those petty fucking idiots. I fucking hate it.
Like they know that they made it up, and they're still trying to. It's
fucking,
so good, dude. I mean, they're demons. They belong in hell. I mean, the thing that really made me sick reading about this was just how they they treat their workers as props. Like to them, any like marginal improvements that they've made for the workers is literally all just for PR. Everything supposedly good that they do is just for PR and to feel good about themselves and to be able to go to these festivals and conferences that rich people go to and say, look how good I am. And they all pat each other on the back. And they're like, oh my God, you're the best. You're the human of the year. You're so amazing. And that's it. That's what they want at the end of the day. They're very old. If you were to like go to where, he's just like out and about, you
all right,
guys. All right, that's enough. That's enough.
He's in his 80s. That's all I'm saying.
Oh God. All right, we're ending it here because this is obviously getting a little bit out of hand. All right.
Hey,
everyone,
love it.
you know what to do.
Everyone, enjoy Fiji brand water bottles. This podcast is officially sponsored by the wonderful company. Lynda Resnick said she loves our show.
All right, guys. So it's time to pay the bills. Do you guys like pistachios? Hi, John. I like pistachio ice cream. Yeah, I like pistachio ice cream too. But I also like really wonderful pistachios. And how about those little clementines? Like I can't get enough of them. Aren't those the nice one that they're called like cuties something? Actually, that's not the ones I'm talking about today, John.
All right,
cool.
next
Stay
on
cool.
Pod Save America, nuking Iran.
All right. Stay cool. Stay cool. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Cracking Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Cracking Gangnam Style. Hey, break your nuts now. Crack. Pistachios. Cracking Gangnam Style.
Psy does it, then we all go nuts.
Crack.
Wonderful pistachios. Get cracking.